This is for our weekend public affairs programming. This WISN radio is our here in Milwaukee News Talk. We're talking with Mark Richardson of Allergy Purifiers. How are you?
I'm good.
Great. Yes, and thank you for fitting me in the schedule. I was just looking around for air purifier things, and I ran across your the online book there, and I was like, well, this is fascinating. I want to talk about this. So what I want to do is spend about 10 minutes just talking about air purifiers, and obviously we'll hit on the Alive Air Purifier and what it does as well. But I really want to talk about what people should look for, especially this time of year, because a lot of folks now are closing up the windows and they're dealing with a lot of the dust and allergens and from the leaves that are falling. So what people should look for their specific conditions. Make sense?
That's what I do.
Great. Well, let's start off by talking about your guide to natural allergy and asthma relief. And this was not just something that you decided to do for fun. You started because, well, it's something that you needed to do for you.
Yeah, when I was a young child, even at 5 or 6, I had really severe asthma and allergies, and I went kind of the medical route, with my parents as a kid. Eventually ended up as an allergist, and there was a lot of little needles on my arm and shots every week, and nothing really helped that much. And I don't know whether I was just too stubborn as a kid or too young to know just to follow what everybody else says. But I started reading even at age 9 and 10 about herbs, and there's got to be a reason why I'm different than the next person in terms of allergies. And so I started to come across things about herbs, and that time, which was, early 60s, I started to buy air purifiers and anything that really cut back on some of the life-threatening asthma attacks I'd have. So that kind of set me in the direction of really searching for anything to get rid of it, not just alleviate it.
Right. Well, and that's the thing some of us here in the office are talking about, because a lot of us here are allergy sufferers and we're all experimenting. And I just moved to Milwaukee about a year and a half ago, and obviously the pollens that are here are different than the ones I experienced in central Pennsylvania or when I was down in Florida or LA. So you have to mix and match and try different things, and not all medicines work for everyone, but there are. And the other problem too is, you talked about the air purifiers. There are so many out there that do different things and deal with different allergens. If you have an allergy, say, to pet dander, well, then this certain type may not work for you. But if you're allergic to some pollen, say, from trees, well, then another type might not work for you. So where do you start when you're looking for an air purifier?
Well, that's a good question, because I think I've had thousands of calls of people saying, I have allergies, what purifier should I use? My initial response back is, well, what allergies do you have? Because that's going to determine the technology. So there are 9 basic technologies, and all do something a little bit different. So I'll start with the ones that are probably the most important to have based on, let's say, pollen and, dust allergies, that sort of thing.
Right.
Well, with those kind of molecules, then you want to look first for a HEPA filter. And the difference in a HEPA filter is the infomercial ones aren't HEPA filters in general. But a HEPA filter is like a cloth filter, so that's actually going to capture and hold your pollen, your dust. So it's really the only way to get rid of pollen and dust in the air in your home is through a HEPA filter. And the thing to watch out with HEPA or machines that are HEPA machines is check out what the replacement filter costs, because I've seen examples where you buy a fairly reasonably priced HEPA air purifier, even a small one for the bedroom. But then you go to replace the HEPA filter, and it's little like inkjet cartridges in an inkjet. The printer's cheap, but you go back to buy the ink, and it's like $40. Well, I've seen HEPA filters are like $100, $120. So you need to shop a little bit to be smart on the back end as well as on the front end in terms of HEPAs.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, and I think everybody does need to remember that one is check out what are the replaceable parts in any air filter, because and that was one of the cool things that I think everybody fell in love with, that the Sharper Image Ionic Breeze were like, oh, all you have to do is wipe it down. Well, yeah, but once you do that, it starts to lose its charge and it starts to lose any effectiveness that it might have had. So you do need to watch out for replaceable parts or the longevity of the machine.
Yeah, and the Sharper Image got bumped because the plates were actually producing a dangerous side effect called ozone. And so some of the washable plate type ones, and Oryx kind of another, and actually those plate types are good for pollution, for odor, for smoke, but they're really not that good for pollen and dust, because those charged plates, so those work on just electricity, positive and negative, going through those plates. And a lot of things in the air are the opposite, so they're like a magnet. However, dust and pollen isn't very charged, so they're really not that effective, even if they claim they're effective for dust and dander. So the electrostatic one, it's good if you got a smoke problem, but really not good if you have like an allergy problem, I'd say.
Yeah, we're talking with Mark Richardson. He is with Allergy Purifiers. He's also written an online book, Guide to Natural Allergy and Asthma Relief. And as an allergy sufferer myself, I reached out to Richardson to find out what are the different types of air filters that are out there, and what you should look for when you start to when you realize that you've got allergy symptoms that could be alleviated at least within the home. And we spend 12 hours a day in our home and 8 hours of those sleeping, and it's really important to have the ability to breathe while you're sleeping. A lot of folks, they deal with the CPAP machines now for sleep apnea and things like that, but if they could open those airways naturally, it would be a lot easier and a lot better for you in the long run than those kind of machines.
Well, yeah, and I'll go through the next technology.
Please.
Let's say you have allergic to or sensitive to chemicals or odors, then you probably want to look with a machine that also includes carbon and or zeolite. Zeolite isn't fine so often, but they both kind of do the same thing. They're just minerals that have a charge to them and a lot of little tiny pores inside the mineral that they're actually going to trap gases. And those have to be replaced every 4 to 6 months, depending on the size too. But if you got chemical or odor sensitivity, that would be the route to go for that kind of sensitivity. The next, let's say if somebody has pets or you're allergic to pets, well then, besides the HEPA, which is going to be good to catch a lot of the dander and hair, it would also probably be good to find one that has a pre-filter, which is just like a washable screen. It's going to make the HEPA last longer, but it's going to capture pet hair and dander as well. That's kind of like a way to get better use out of a HEPA filter.
Well, it's just like the screens like prospectors use. It's got the big holes on top, then the smaller holes as you go down in order to catch the different sized pieces.
When I was a kid, I had like 4 different machines in my room. I had a little negative ionizer. I'll talk about that in 1 second. I had a HEPA filter. I had electrostatic. And what was the other one I had? I had a UV bulb to kill germs and bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to find a machine. Now, even if let's say you're allergic to pollen, so you want to get HEPA to get the pollen out of the air. But all the things that are in the air, except the air itself, are things that kind of compromise the immune system, so they can affect your allergies. Even if you're just allergic to one thing, it's good to get a multiple technology unit. If you've got breathing problems, another technology is ozone, which there's a lot of controversy about it because too much ozone can actually irritate your lungs and passageways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably the best for killing mold and for smoke and for odor. It's just really fast because ozone goes out into the room and kills all that stuff. And it has a little bit of a funny smell to it. But if you have any kind of breathing problems, that's what pulled the Sharper image off. They went out of business actually because it was too much ozone it was producing from those washable plates. Another type is I mentioned UV light basically, and there's a couple different versions of that to kill germs, viruses, bacteria to kind of prevent colds and flus. So that's kind of neat to have, and it's not that expensive. Negative ions is another one where a lot of people get confused between negative ions and ozone, and they're two different things. Negative ions, well, I'll give you an example. When you're out in the country or you're by the ocean, how you sleep really good and you have a lot of energy? That's because nature naturally produces, especially moving water or wind moving through trees, produces a lot of negative ions. So the negative ion count is really high out in the country.
Mm-hmm.
However, you're indoors and you got the heat on or air conditioning and you're inside 4 walls, negative ion levels go down and down and down. That's why you get more tired, like when you're in an office building all day long. So you want a high negative ion output. Now, negative ions is good to have. A lot of air purifiers do. It'll actually increase the energy level in the body. It improves breathing. If you sleep with it on, many people find they sleep a lot better. And it's just going to affect your mood as well. And it will kill a little bit of mold and a little bit of odor, not as effectively as some of the other methods, but it's good to have just for health reasons. To produce a lot of negative ions, you're going to think a lot more clearly and more energy.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I grew up in the country, and I really noticed when I moved into even slightly urban areas how much different that I was, different I was sleeping. Now, obviously, part of that was I was dealing with traffic for the first time in my life, but the other part was, the air felt stale.
It's the difference between a live air and dead air is negative ions. In fact, I used to have one that it's better to have it inside a machine, but as a kid, I found some little tiny ones, almost look like little Glade plugins. You plug it in the wall, and it produces a lot of negative ions, and you sleep better, and you think better. So for performance at work, a negative ion is a really good idea.
Yeah.
The difference between that and ozone is negative ions are just the negative side of a healthy oxygen molecule, whereas ozone is an extra molecule. It's O2 is oxygen, is two oxygen molecules. O3 is ozone, and that third molecule, and actually lightning creates ozone. Sometimes you can smell it after a lightning storm.
Oh, yeah.
That third molecule is very unstable, which is great for killing smoke or odor, but that unstable molecule is almost like an oxidant in your body. It'll actually attack tissue if there are too many particles of ozone. But people get a lot of confused, and some electrostatic or positive and negative machines as a byproduct produce some ozone, and then some people sell machines that are actually ozone generators because they are so good for mold and smoke.
Right.
So that's kind of the range of the basic, different technologies. So.
Well, and that's part of the problem. And by the way, we're talking with Mark Richardson of Alive Air Purifiers, talking about the different technologies that are found out there in air purifiers. And that's a lot of the problem that people have, is that when they start to look, it becomes overwhelming for them, especially if you just jump onto the internet and type in air purifiers. Now, you can go check out a lot of the information that we're talking about today at alleviate.com, all one word. Now, that's the machine that Mark put together that has a variety of technologies in them. And let's actually talk about some of the issues that you've run into in terms of regulation of air purifiers. And we talked about the sharper image because that brought to attention some of the issues with the lack of regulation within the air purifier industry, because people can basically go out there and make any sort of claim that they want, and there's really no standard set.
Yeah, that's true. And some of it is because the range of technology and each technology does something a little bit different, and some release things out into the air, which affects square footage. So it hasn't been real regulated. And, the infomercial ones, unfortunately, they do a good job of letting people know they need something to clean the air, but the markup on those is usually such they don't include the really good technology. So I just find a lot of times it's kind of educating people because there's a lot of confusion about what they do need or what technology really matches. So there's questionable practices in terms of warranties and guarantees where, it's prorated. So after a year, if you buy one, the company's actually making money off the machine that broke down. So most of them now are made in China, most of the machines.
Sure, China, Mexico, the factory countries now.
You can't really stay in business, unfortunately. It'd be nice if that starts coming back to the U.S. and some of our parts we make here, I really like to build the whole thing here. There's some regulation things that way. There's a lot of claims made on technology that really doesn't do that good of a job. One of the things I like to do is test machines for how many particles they actually take out of the air. You can measure how many particles are in the room when it's been running, and that shows whether at least the dust and pollen is really getting out of the air or not.
Yeah.
Some of the purifiers that have no fan don't use a lot of energy, but they're usually ozone-based. And so companies said, well, gee, it doesn't cost any money to run it at all, like pennies a day. But it doesn't really move enough air to really clean the house.
Right, so it's not costing a lot to run, but it's also not doing a lot.
There's kind of some funny standards in the industry, and one of the measurements of how much things get out of the air is actually based on a lobby by some of the big companies. So the certification is a little bit suspect.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
We're talking with Mark Richardson of Alive Air Purifiers. You can find out more about his product at alleviate.com. And we're talking about also his book, The Guide to Natural Allergy and Asthma Relief, which has a look at a variety of technologies that are out there, herbal medicines as well, things that you can do to help keep the allergies away and the cold and flu germs this time of year as well. It's very, very important. They've also, by the way, we'll tell folks a little bit about the product that you came up with. It incorporates a lot of the different technologies because, as you said, you are like me. You suffer from a variety of things, and you needed to find a way to put all of these technologies into one to make it a little bit easier for folks. Tell us about what brought you to create the Alive Air Purifier.
I originally went back to school for nutrition, so it was more wanting to be a health practitioner, and then I felt I didn't really reach that many people that way, so I went out and I did some workshops with Tony Robbins, and I had a chance to, just educate people and communicate. But over the years, because of my story getting rid of asthma and allergies, I was always trying different purifiers, and people were always asking me about them. And a friend actually talked to me about it one day, about what, and I said, well, this one has of the 9 technologies. This one has 5. This one has 3. And I said, nobody's really put it all together. And he turns out to be probably one of the best designers in the world. So we actually started to go to the factories where most of the units were made in China, and actually started to look at, could we provide someone with an affordable one that includes, all the major technologies, HEPA, electrostatic, carbon, UV light, TiO2, negative ions, and try to come up with something that for the average person is going to cover more of the bases, and then just sell it online so we can keep the price reasonable.
Right.
And then also try to sell it. And this is more because it always bothered me. Let's try to have an affordable replacement happen, affordable parts.
Right.
So it's not you buy a machine and then you find out it's going to cost you $150 a year to run it or whatever.
Well, then that's one of the things that I like that you guys have done is not only are you're creating this to make money, and let's be frank, the capitalist system, God bless you, you're making money on it, but you're also doing it to help people, which is so important, and it's something you really want to look for, in the manufacture of something, is that, you're not just making it for a profit motive, you're making it because you really do want to help people.
Right. Yeah, as a former asthmatic, when somebody would call and their son has asthma, I know what it's like. One time when my mother drove me to the hospital, and I thought, this is it, I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't breathe, and I got a shot of adrenaline from our family doctor, nice enough, came out, 10 o'clock Christmas Eve. But after that, it just, I couldn't sleep nights. I didn't think I was really doing something that gave people a good value, but more importantly was really improving their health,
mm-hmm.
Taking some of the problems of the industry out. So that was kind of more my incentive than business itself.
Right. Mark Richardson of Alive Air Purifiers. You can find out more about his machine at alleviate.com. So the takeaway for folks, I think most important is, if you are an allergy sufferer or suffer from, the germs or the stale air, what have you, the first thing to do is to figure out exactly what your needs are and then find a machine that is going to address those needs. Now, obviously, the Alive Air Purifier does address quite a variety, has the 9 different technologies in it. But the second thing then, it sounds like, is to look out for the build quality and how much it's going to cost you to maintain this product.
The Alive Air machine is basically the HEPA filter and UV bulb. You'll change maybe about once a year, maybe every 9 months, depending on how much dust or dirt you have in your home. And then there's a couple washable filters in it, too, to make the HEPA last longer. But I think for both of them, it's like $50 a year for the UV bulb, which is going to kill germs, bacteria, viruses, and to replace the HEPA. And that also includes the carbon filter for odor, gases, and chemical sensitivities.
Yeah, so it's a very nice product, and it looks very good, and I do recommend folks checking that out. But obviously the reason we brought Mark on here was to talk about, the different technologies. Also, you can check out the online guide to natural allergy and asthma relief. You've got a link to that up at alleviateairpurifier.com as well, right?
Yeah, I do. In fact, but I had a thought was, and that's that if anybody, is interested in the purifying your body, I'd like to send them a free copy of the book.
Oh, great.
And so if they, what I'll do is probably send us an email if you purchase one, and I'll send you a link, or way to get the book, and we'll send you the book.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about Live Air Purifier. I was looking around, I found a link, and it was a very informative website. Told me a lot of the things that I was looking to find out. So just go check it out. There's questions and answers, video instructions, and a very easy way to contact Mark and the company. So check it out, alleviateairpurifier.com. And Mark, I meant to bring you on for 10 minutes. We've gone about 20, but I found the information very, very useful. So I want to thank you for taking a few minutes and talking with us about the variety of technologies that are out there for air purifiers, and talking about your own experiences in building the Alive Air Purifier as well.
Well, thank you, Joseph, for having me. If nothing else, I hope it helps somebody just simply breathe better.
Yeah.